What is up, everybody? Coach Juma here, and today we're going to be breaking down a stupid simple guide to hormones, understanding all the different hormones that you've probably heard about, because there's been a huge influx of people over the last few years talking about how hormones are the main reason people aren't able to lose weight or are struggling to lose weight, even going so far as to say that calories don't matter nearly as much as hormones. So we're going to break down and understand what hormones are, which hormones are most important, what they do in the body, and how to improve your levels of those hormones so that you can feel better in your own body and continue to make the weight loss that you're looking for. But before we dive into hormones and understanding what they do and what they are, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're always getting the content and knowing when it comes out, because this is honestly going to help you out a lot, dude. You know, you're going to be less confused, you're going to know better, you're going to be smarter than your friends. Everyone likes being smarter than their friends. You have more sex appeal. Intelligence is sexy. You know, like, this is a win-win for both of us. I get subscribers, you get knowledge. All right, now let's get into the video. So, disclaimer before getting started, I'm not a medical professional. You're not a medical professional. Don't self-diagnose for yourself, and don't use this as a way to diagnose yourself either. But take this as an opportunity to look for red flags that you should possibly get your blood work done with a doctor so that you can have a proper diagnosis for what you could be low in or high in. A lot of insurance providers take care of blood work for you, and most doctors are willing to give you the blood work for these specific hormonal markers if you ask for them. So don't be shy. If some of these sound like it could be you, don't just blindly assume that it's true for you. If some of the symptoms of high or low hormonal levels sound like they could be you, get your blood work done with a doctor and actually have the hard data to back up whether or not you have these high or low hormonal levels. This is just for educational purposes only. Don't use it to diagnose yourself. I'm not liable or responsible for anything that can be said or done. So hormones are a big hot topic buzzword right now in the fitness and nutrition space, and a lot of people use it as a way to lead you to think that you need their hormone plan to help you lose more weight. But is that actually what is happening, and is that how your body works? Breaking things down, there's something known as the P3 model for fat loss. And what that is basically a chain reaction of what it takes to change your physical body, which is the first P. Your physical body only changes as a direct result of the physiological responses that happen within your body. In order to lose fat, your body has to go through fat loss processes at a cellular level for that fat to be released, which I don't think is crazy. I think we all intuitively know that to a degree. But in order to elicit physiological responses, you need to have the right practices and the right perceptions with movement, food, stress management, recovery/sleep, and your calorie intake and nutritional intake to elicit that physiological response. So in a way, hormones, aka the physiological response in the P3 model, does lead to physical change, but it only happens when you have the right practices in place to create that physical change, to influence your physiological processes, aka your hormones, to want to create change in your body. This happens and works because our body is constantly striving for homeostasis. It wants balance, so to speak, and it wants to constantly regulate that balance whenever possible. When you do something to your body that requires balance, aka diet, create a calorie deficit, work out, be stressed, your body regulates that and tries to get back to homeostasis by using hormones as little messengers to regulate your entire body. And it's actually an incredibly complex system that you probably need years of schooling to fully understand, called the endocrine system. And what it is a network of glands that sends out hormone messengers to different cell receptors in the body to send a message to get that cell to do what it's intended to do. In a super simplified form, it's kind of like a light switch to turn on your light. You flip on the light switch, that sends a signal to your light bulb to turn on, and as a result, now you have a turned on light. That's kind of the general process here. Your hormone is that transport that goes from the light switch to the light to tell the light to turn on. The light being the cell, the light switch being the gland that is influencing what the cell is doing. Now, when an imbalance occurs, that leads to dysregulation in the body and throughout the body, because hormones literally regulate everything in your body, from your body weight to your emotions to your appetite to your temperament, etc., etc., etc. You can view it kind of as having loose wires or shorts in the electrical system with that light bulb example that we used earlier. Unlike a wiring system like a light switch and a light bulb, you can't directly reconnect wires that have been severed. You can only work on whether or not you hit the light switch or not. And that's important to recognize. You don't have any direct control over influencing whether or not a hormone is there or how it moves throughout your body. But you do have influence over whether or not that signal is being sent from the light switch to the light bulb. In this video, we're breaking down the 5 most popular hormones that you probably hear on social media. Those hormones are going to be testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, insulin, and your thyroid hormones. Starting off with testosterone, this is a sex hormone that is incredibly popular, especially among men, because it helps regulate sex drive, improve libido, erectile function in men, bone mass and density, fat distribution, as well as red blood cell production because it helps with your energy levels. So it has a lot of key roles in the body. And testosterone isn't something that's exclusively had in men. Women also have and create testosterone naturally. Men create it through the testicles, women through the ovaries and the adrenal glands as well. It also plays a really big role in recovery from training as well as metabolic function. Having more testosterone will improve your training performance, but having too much can also have negative effects. And you'll see with all of these hormones, you never want to have too much or too little. You want to be kind of in the Goldilocks zone of just enough for all of them to really have the best health benefits and feel your best doing it. Some signs of high levels of testosterone include being easily irritable, being super aggressive, having issues with fertility, acne, oily skin. If you're a woman, having excessive facial hair, weight gain, especially in the belly area, trouble sleeping through the night, and again for women, having ovarian cysts. All of these are signs of having too much testosterone. Having too little testosterone will lead you to having a decreased sex drive, decreased muscle mass or strength, less elasticity in your skin, which leads to wrinkly skin, thinning hair, hot flashes, depression, feeling tired and unmotivated, and again, weight gain. You can do things through practices and perceptions that are going to positively influence and put you in optimal testosterone ranges. Those things include exercising regularly, going through resistance training and working on challenging your muscles and creating muscular tension has been shown to boost and regulate testosterone levels. But this is best done in moderation. Overdoing high intensity resistance training or high intensity cardio activity leads to an excessive increase in cortisol alongside an excessive increase in testosterone. So you want to balance all of your high intensity activities with some low intensity recovery activities as well. So this looks like 3 to 5 days of strength training and another 7 days a week of just doing regular walks, meditating, breathing exercises, stretching after a workout. All those things are different recovery exercises and forms of low intensity movement that help avoid excessive hormone production in any one direction. Another way to properly regulate and balance out testosterone is by getting in enough sleep. The ideal amount of sleep is getting at least 7 hours a night. It's been measured and shown that sleeping even 5 hours a night just for a week leads to a decrease of 50% of testosterone production. Another thing is making sure that you're managing stress properly. When it comes to being stressed, having a spike in cortisol, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, you're being put into a fight or flight response. The main priority at this time is survival in your body. Heart rate is going to be elevated. You're going to be put in a catabolic state, which means your muscle is being broken down and your body is going to be storing fat and reducing testosterone production. Cortisol is basically the inverse of testosterone. Now, you need to elevate cortisol at times to make more testosterone, but you want to make sure that you're balancing it out so you're not having excessive cortisol production. Because when you're in a fight or flight response, your body doesn't see it as a good opportunity to reproduce. So you need to put your body in a safe space, in a low stress space for it to produce more testosterone. And of course, nutrition plays a big role in your testosterone production as well. Making sure you're getting in sufficient protein, fiber, and micronutrients, vitamins and minerals will help make sure that your body has the tools it needs to continue making more testosterone. A wide variety of foods from whole food sources, again, lean meats, proteins, fruits, and vegetables are more than enough to help you do that. And that pretty much sums up testosterone. And now going to the other sex hormone, which is estrogen. This one is mostly found in women, but men also produce estrogen as well. And there are 3 types of estrogen that are made in the body: estrone, estradiol, and estriol. Yeah, excessive estradiol is what leads to storing more body fat. For men, it's like it makes them more feminine. Yeah, it just makes you bitches. For women, estrogen is made in the ovaries, but for both men and women, you can make estrogen through body fat. So having excessive amounts of body fat leads to increased estrogen production, which is also part of the reason why women have naturally higher body fat levels than men. In women, it really helps with having a good, healthy menstrual cycle, and with men, it helps with libido as well as the production of sperm. It also plays a big role when it comes to creating utilization of other hormones. Just like with testosterone, you don't want to have too much of this or too little of this. You want to be right in the Goldilocks zone with how much estrogen you have. Signs of low estrogen include hot flashes, low energy levels, painful intercourse, migraines, brain fog, trouble concentrating, mood swings, anxiety, thinning hair, dry skin, achy joints, and weight gain, especially around the belly area. Possible signs of high levels of estrogen include heavy periods and strong PMS symptoms, weight gain, migraines, brain fog, low self-esteem, interrupted sleep, craving sugary sugary foods, endometriosis, thyroid problems, and blood pressure issues. So what can you do to influence and regulate your estrogen levels? One is going to be exercise. Regular physical activity and training can help with lowering estrogen levels. But just like with testosterone, excessive exercise, especially if it's high intensity, drives up cortisol and puts you in that constant fight or flight response, which doesn't bode well for reproduction. And as this being another sex hormone, it's going to be produced less often because your body doesn't deem the environment fit for reproduction. So having that balance of high intensity activity and low intensity activity is going to be key to managing your balance of estrogen. And while on that topic, managing your stress is going to be a good way to manage your overall estrogen productions as well. So incorporating stress relieving activities that you find relaxing will be key to managing your estrogen as well as your testosterone levels. Another thing to help with estrogen production and maintaining healthy estrogen levels is sleep. When we sleep, our liver resets from the hard work of cleansing our body throughout the day. And I use air quotes because it's an oversimplification of what it's actually doing. But it's not able to do this if you don't get enough sleep. And if you don't get enough sleep, it's going to recirculate excess estrogen throughout the body, leading you to having excessive estrogen as well. Nutritionally, we want to make sure we're getting a sufficient amount of good cholesterol in our diets so that our body has the tools it needs to make estrogen. You can find these through healthy fat sources. Things like avocados, eggs, nuts, seeds, fish are all great clean sources of cholesterol and fats for your body to use to make estrogen with. And now getting into cortisol. We've already alluded to cortisol a number of times, but cortisol is the hormone that comes when your body experiences any kind of stress, mental stress from work, from relationships, from having too many things to do, from school, whatever. Emotional stress from going through a damaging experience. Physical stress from working out or being under physical duress. Nutritional stress from being in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus for excessive periods of time. The amount of cortisol produced will vary depending on the intensity of that stress. Your physiological response depends on your practices and your perceptions. You do a physically strenuous activity, a high intensity workout, that's going to lead to the production of cortisol. Or your perceptions. You perceive a stressful situation, your body is going to react by creating cortisol. Of course, your body already naturally creates cortisol when you wake up to alert you to search for food, do your work, and reproduce. It's usually highest first thing in the morning, 30 to 60 minutes after you waken up, and slowly decreases throughout the day so that by the end of the day, you're out of your fight or flight response and your body wants to go to sleep at that point. Cortisol also has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, which is why when stress occurs, which all stress creates some sort of inflammation in the body, it is released to help manage that inflammation. And why its chemical equivalent, cortisone, is used with a lot of injuries to help manage inflammation as well. Cortisol also helps regulate blood sugar levels, including insulin, which we'll get to in a little bit. It also helps with proper digestion, maintaining a healthy metabolism, and upholding stressors while maintaining good blood pressure. There's a lot to be said about cortisol, but that is going to be a very basic breakdown of what it does. Like we've been mentioning, too much cortisol can have a lot of negative ramifications in the body, including unexpected weight gain, high blood pressure, trouble sleeping, achy joints, muscle fatigue, increased mood swings, brain fog, and impaired thyroid function, as well as creating a lot of digestive stress, especially if you have a pre-existing gut condition like IBS, Crohn's, Hashimoto's, or something similar to that. You might notice if you have any of those diagnoses that when going through particularly stressful periods of time that your digestion gets worse. That is a large part due to having excessive cortisol for long periods of time. It's not necessarily the enemy here because cortisol does a lot of good too. And having too little cortisol can lead to excessive inflammation, muscle fatigue, feeling dizzy, rapid weight loss or weight gain, and low blood pressure. So just like with all the other hormones we talked about so far, you do want to be in that Goldilocks zone. And the best way to do that, having lots of recovery-filled or low-stress activities throughout the day. And this is especially important if you have a very high-stress lifestyle. If you're always go, 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 super busy, sleep-deprived, and at the same time you're dieting and doing high-intensity training, you need to balance all of those out with stress-relieving activities to reduce the amount of cortisol in your body and give your body the break that it needs to recover. Exercise is really helpful for managing cortisol. Even though it temporarily spikes cortisol, it brings it back down immediately after, especially if you do low intensity activity to follow it up. So really heavy resistance training or some sort of HIIT class, following it up with walking, yoga, or stretching can help with managing cortisol levels immediately in the short term. Sleep is also a really important natural way to manage your cortisol levels. Because when you wake up, as I mentioned, cortisol levels are going to be at its highest. When you sleep, cortisol should be at its lowest. Having good, consistent sleep will help regulate this fluctuation of cortisol, so you're not constantly at a high level of cortisol. You have that spike in the morning and it'll naturally decline the more you regulate your sleep. Nutritionally, there are a lot of things that you could do to manage your overall cortisol levels. One big thing is, especially if you have general high stress all the time as is, avoiding caffeine and any kind of stimulant will dramatically help with cortisol regulation. So all of these stimulants, and caffeine in particular, the world's most popular stimulant, increase cortisol production as a way to make you alert, because when you're in a fight or flight response, you are more alert. So you're intentionally putting yourself in a high stress situation by drinking coffee, by having caffeine, having an energy drink, and putting your cortisol through the roof. If you're already incredibly stressed, adding caffeine only makes that worse. Limiting caffeine intake and stopping caffeine intake 8 hours before bedtime can also help with going to sleep easier, which in turn will help with managing cortisol as well. So it's a big cascade effect. Carbs are also a natural way to blunt cortisol production and put you in a recovery state. That's why if you're a high stress individual, having carbs before and after your workout can go a long way in managing your recovery and improving your overall cortisol level. Last hormone we're going to be talking about here is insulin. And this one is often super demonized, especially by the keto community and the low carb people. But insulin plays a very valuable role in your body, and it's necessary to have because it influences every other hormone as well. Insulin is produced by the pancreas and enables the body to use sugar in the form of glucose, mostly from carbs, but is converted from other types of food as well through various processes which give our body energy or is stored to be used for later as energy. In healthy individuals, insulin helps regulate our blood sugar levels. It also helps with improving memory and brain function as well. It's incredibly important, and it's not something that should be demonized or looked down upon or something you should try to avoid. Of course, excessive insulin is a bad thing, but that's true for all other hormones. With insulin, excessive insulin leads to pre-diabetes, weight gain, skin tags, high blood pressure, and even type 2 diabetes. Having low insulin, which usually happens before we've eaten anything or after periods of time where we haven't eaten for a while, leads to low energy levels, feeling nauseous, nervous, or anxious, blurred vision, headaches, or just general fatigue. And what we can naturally do to optimize our insulin levels is exercise. Surprise, it's the same as all the other ones. But once again, over exercising can reduce the amount of insulin that your body produces because it leads to an excessive amount of cortisol. And anytime there's more cortisol, it's going to reduce a lot of other hormones as well. Sleep is also going to be incredibly helpful because having a lack of sleep or being sleep deprived leads to an increase in cortisol, which decreases overall glucose tolerance, leading to a semblance of insulin resistance. Managing stress is also going to be incredibly important because, as we've already talked about, being stressed leads to a spike in cortisol. A spike in cortisol leads to a demand in energy, usually from simple sugars and carbs. This demand for energy leads to increase in blood sugar levels because we need that increase in energy to manage the stress response, which ultimately means insulin goes up for an elevated period of time. Therefore, managing stress is going to be the most important thing to managing our overall blood sugar levels. And of course, nutrition is incredibly important for regulating and balancing insulin as well. Having just simple carbs in a meal or a snack always leads to a high blood sugar spike and a hard crash afterwards as well. Pairing those foods with slower digesting foods that manage the height of the spike and the degree of the crash will help you be able to eat those foods and incorporate them and get the benefits of them without having such a negative impact on your insulin levels. Anytime you have a simple carb or even a complex carb, making sure to pair it with proteins, fats, or fiber can go a long way. This is a fantastic snacking tip to avoid those midday crashes or blood sugar crashes that you might have from just a one-off basic snack or a meal that is high carb that gets you to feel exhausted afterwards. So now, stupid simple summary on hormones here. With all hormones, once again, they do influence your physical progress and how you look in the mirror, but your hormones are themselves influenced by your practices and perception. And with all hormones, it's really the same kind of things that you need to be aware of to manage and work toward so that they are at a healthy range. You never want them to be too much and you never want them to be too little. You want to have just the right amount of all of them at all times to really be your healthiest. And you can do that by exercising regularly and having high intensity training, but balancing that with low intensity activity so you're not doing excessive high intensity training, which leads to too much inflammation, like we've already mentioned. Sleeping for 7+ hours a night. This is really the simplest and most boring thing that you can do, to manage your overall health, lose fat faster, and have regulated hormones. Sleep for 7 hours a night and you're gonna feel a big difference in your health and in your body. Managing your stress. If cortisol is high, you're not gonna be able to produce the other hormones as well as you can. So manage your stress. Anytime you have a stressor in your life, try to match it with a relaxant or anti-stressing activity for yourself. This includes physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, and nutritional stress. And lastly, with your nutrition, all of the different hormones have different nutritional needs, but just as a general rule of thumb, have lean meats and proteins with every meal. Have some sort of color with every single meal from fruits or vegetables. Make sure that you pair any kind of simple sugar or carb with another fibrous carb or lean protein. This will help cover all of your bases when it comes to these big hormones that are going to be changing your body. So I hope you enjoyed this stupid simple guide to hormones, and make sure to share it with a friend that also wants to learn this. And until next time, stay stupid.
You